Hello and welcome to the practical walkthrough on creating a standalone keylogger. So we are implementing our first project, which is the standalone keylogger. Open up your Visual Studio and then click on Create a New Project. Select C#, Windows Console, and then click on the Console app .NET Framework. Click on the Next button. Select the folder Red Projects 2, and then for the project name, give it the name of Standalone Keylogger. The solution name is also the same, Standalone Keylogger, and then click on the Create button. Next, go and download this file from the resource section for this lecture. This file is called standalonekeylogger.txt. Copy the entire content of this file and then overwrite whatever is here with the content of the file. We will now fix the import libraries. Notice if you see any red underline here, it means that the references or the imports are not yet fixed. So the first one I'm seeing here is System Windows Form. So you will see this underline here. So we need to add references to this assembly, to this library. So head over to the references here, right click, select Add References, and look for System Windows Forms. Scroll down to System, Windows Forms, and check on it. And then click OK. So that has been fixed. Next, you will see another underline here in red, the class called Key. Hover your mouse over there and then select Show Potential Fixes. And then scroll down and select this one, using System Windows Input, and click on it. So that has been fixed. Scroll down and look for some more underlines. Another one is here. Hover your mouse over keyboard and then click on Show Potential Fixes. And then here, select Using System Windows Input. Click on it. So now we have fixed all the missing references and imports, and our code has no more errors. I will now explain the code. Over here, we create a collection called #set press keys history in order to keep a history of the key that has been pressed. And then we import the user32dal twice because we need to use the function getForegroundWindow and getWindowThreadProcessID. And then we mark our main class as a static thread because this program, some of the functions require it. Then we create a string path called keystrokes.txt, which will store all the keylogs, all the keystrokes. And then we use the function getActiveWindowProcessName, and then we save it to a string called ActiveProcessName. This is necessary in order to capture the name of the window that is in the foreground. That is important because when we save the keystrokes later, we want to know which was the foreground window that the user was engaged in when the keystrokes were captured. We also create another string called previous process name and assign it the current active process name. We created this string in order to keep track of what was the old window, the previous window that was in the foreground, so that we can then detect whether the user has switched a different foreground window. Next, we check whether or not the keystroke text file exists. If the keystroke text file does not exist, then we create it. We create this keystroke text file in the same folder as where the keylog is located. And then we write the name of the active foreground window into the keylog file. After that, we have a perpetual while loop. This is the core of the program. This perpetual while loop will always be looping and constantly capturing the keystrokes. In order not to overwhelm the CPU, we will sleep for 5 milliseconds between each loop. And then we call the get new pressed keys function and retrieve the key that was typed by the user and save it to a string called key pressed. This get new key pressed function is defined down here, and I will explain it in a while. And then we also print out the key that was typed by the user to the console so that we can debug whether our program is working correctly. Next, we will open the keystroke file and append to it using the stream writer. We will get the foreground window's name using the getActiveWindowsProcessName and then save it to this string called ActiveProcessName. And then we will now compare whether it is the same as the previous windows that was in the foreground. So this is how C# compares two strings. We use the .equals operator. And then we'll save that result of the comparison to a boolean variable called isOProcess. And then we test it here. If it is not an O process, it means that the user has just opened another new window in the foreground. That window could be Notepad or Chrome or any other programs. So we want to save that name of that new window in the foreground into the log file. So this is where we save it to the log file by using the screenwriter class. And then we now save the current foreground window into the string called previous process name so that in the next iteration of the loop, we can then check again whether the user has changed another different foreground window. After that, we save the key that was pressed into the log file, into the keystrokes file. And this process keeps on repeating. Now I'll explain to you how this getNewKeyPress function works. So let's go down and take a look at it. The getNewKeyPress function will return the string. This string is the key that was typed by the user. So we create a temporary variable called pressedKey and initialize it to be empty. And then we loop through, using the for each loop through every key on the keyboard. And then that will get you the number of the key. And here we convert it to a name of the key using and store it in a class called key class. This key class contains the name of the key. Next, we will then create a boolean variable called down and set it to false. And then over here, we are going to test whether the key that was retrieved is empty. If it is not empty, then we will check whether the key was pressed. If the key was pressed, we will then set the boolean variable down to true. That's how we know that the key was pressed. Over here, we check whether the down boolean is true or false. If it's not down and the key press history contains that key, it means that it was previously pressed but it has now been released. And so we will remove that key from the press keys history. The press keys history contains the history of the previous key that was pressed. Every time we press a key, we add it to the press keys history down here. Else, if the key that was being pressed, if the key that is now being checked is actually down and it was not previously pressed, that means it's a new key. So we would save it to the press key history by adding it here. Next, we will check whether the user has pressed the caps lock or the shift key, and then we will add it to the history of press keys. After that, we need to convert that key to lowercase because by default, all keys that are captured are in capital letters. We need to convert it to lowercase because the shift key and the caps lock is not pressed. Else, if the caps lock is being pressed, then we will just save the key into the press key string. Then we will next thing we need to do is to replace the press key. So the press key is passed to this new function called replace strings key, and then it's being returned to the caller. So it's being returned to the caller over here, and saved into key press. So why do we need to replace strings? By default, all keys that are captured have got key names. So let's analyze the replace key strings function down here. Some keys that are pressed are non-characters. For example, some keys that are pressed are the space bar. So whenever a key is pressed which is not a character, for example the space bar is not a character, then the capture will return the string called space, either lowercase space or capital S space. So we need to replace that string with the actual character of space. The same thing is also happens for return. When a user presses enter key, the enter key is not actually a character. But whenever you capture the keystroke for the enter key, it will return a string called return. So we need to replace that string with the carriage return line feed. Why we do that? We do this because we want our log file to go to the new line. And then if the user presses the escape key, it will return the string called escape. So we need to replace the string with this symbol so that when you write this in the log file, you will understand that the user has pressed the escape key. All this will become clear to you when we test the keylogger later on, and after that take a look at the keylog file, then it will be clear to you. So same thing with all these are all key replacements. We need to replace the string with the actual character. Next one, we are going to take at how we can capture the name of the foreground window, getActive window process name. So that function is defined down here. So getActive process Windows name, getActive window process name will return a string. So we use the API called getForegroundWindow, and it returns a handle. A handle is just a reference to the window that is in the foreground, and then we get the window handle process ID, and then from there, once we got the process ID, we can then get the name of the process by calling the process getProcess by ID. Then after that, once we get the process, we can return the name of the process from the process name member attribute of the process. So we take the process, put a dot there, process name, that will give you the name of the process which is in the foreground. And this will be returned to the caller of getActive window process name. So the caller of this is up here, and once it's returned, it will be saved as a string in active process name. So this is how the keylogger is being written and how it works. So in the next video, we are going to test it out. Thank you for watching.